Hello, Lovelace. Welcome to today's English lesson on personification. Now, you might remember that word from our lessons on figurative language, and hopefully it's a word that you're sort of familiar with, but we're going to look at it in a little bit more detail today. And as you can see from our LO, it's can I identify personification and then use them in a poem? Now, don't worry about the poem bit of it too much, because we all know poems come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. People sort of panic about being asked to write a poem, but it's nothing to worry about. It's just about using our descriptive language really well. And if we can get a handle on personification, then you'll have no problem at all creating a poem using that particular technique. Well, let's have a look at what exactly it is. So what is personification? Personification is when you give an object that is not human, and often not even alive, qualities of a human. Okay, now sometimes we give it to animals, but also to just inanimate objects. Keep going back to the example of Beauty and the Beast. If you've ever seen the cartoon Beauty and the Beast, when you've given a candlestick human characteristics, then that is personification. Equally, in any cartoons or films where the animal can talk and has certain personalities, then that is personification. It's giving that non-human thing the same personality traits and characteristics as a human. Okay? So writers will often use personification to help describe something. They use it to create an image in the reader's mind. We're familiar with our own behaviors, our own characteristics, our own emotions, and so on. So if we can overlay them onto something else, it helps the reader to understand what we're talking about. Okay, so some examples. The stars danced playfully in the sky. Now, we know that stars don't dance. That's a human thing. But it helps create that image of them sort of moving around in the night sky, but dancing playfully. But dancing playfully is very much a human characteristic. Nothing to do with stars, but it just paints that picture. What about this one? The printer spat out the paper. Okay. Again, spitting something out is something that humans do disgustingly. I have met llamas that spit as well, but printers, an object, certainly doesn't spit. But it just helps paint that picture of the fact that paper is coming out quickly. Okay, so the printer spat out the paper. We shouldn't be using spat out for a printer, but it's great personification. The flowers nodded their heads as the wind blew. And again, yes, the flowers are moving in the wind, but that's all they're doing. We're using this idea of nodding their heads as a lovely little image, again, just to create that picture in the reader's mind. Okay. The ocean waves swallowed the boat. Okay. Now, the boat is absolutely being covered, being pummeled by those huge waves. But the idea of swallowing the boat, using that language, again, is something, it's a human trait, swallowing. Yes, animals swallow their food as well, but a wave doesn't swallow anything. A wave may cover something, it may splash something, but to use the word swallow is just helping create that image of the fact it completely engulfs, completely covers the boat. The old chair moaned as the girl and dog jumped on it. Okay. Now, yeah, the chair is taking an absolute hammering there. You can see as the dog comes through, the whole thing is being knocked over. But did the chair moaned? I mean, moaning is, again, a human trait. The chair might well have made a noise as it was hit by both the girl and the dog. But again, we're using language, we're using words and descriptions that relate to humans, and we're overlaying them onto these inanimate objects, these things. Okay, so that's personification. So now it's your turn. Have a look at these pictures and see if you can create a personification sentence, a personification statement for each one. Okay, so we've got the sun, we've got a car, we've got a house, an alarm clock, and a washing machine. Now, these words might help you. You don't have to use them, but they might just help you along the line. pause the video, have a go at creating 5 sentences for me, one each, to give a personification statement to each of these images. Pause the video now. Okay, right. I'll take a look at these when they come up onto Tapestry. But for now, just a couple I thought of as I was just looking there waiting. You could have that the car engine cried out as he found the wrong gear. So again, the car might make a loud noise if you put it in the wrong gear, but to cry out. The alarm clock screamed at the chosen hour, waking her from her slumber. Maybe at the end of the washing cycle, the washing machine spat out the clean clothes. So that sort of idea. What have you come up with? Right. Here's a lovely poem using a lot of personification by a poet called James Stephens. The night was creeping on the ground. She crept and did not make a sound, till she reached a tree, and then she covered it and stole again along the grass beside the wall. I heard the rustle of her shawl, as she threw blackness everywhere upon the sky and ground and air, and in the room where I was hid. But no matter what she did to everything that was without, she could not blow my candle out. So I stared at the night, and she stared back solemnly at me. Okay. Now, first of all, we need to identify what that poem is about. Well, it's actually it's evening time. It's the start of night. So nighttime starting to swallow up the world around it. As the sun disappears and that shadow of nighttime starts to creep across the ground. But there's some lovely personification in here, because ultimately we are just talking about it getting darker. And we could have said that. I mean, we could have got rid of all of these words and just said it was getting dark. But it wouldn't be anything like as wonderful a use of language. So let's have a look at the personification. So now we know we're talking about the night. The night was creeping on the ground. So you can imagine those black shadows getting longer and longer, and the darkness just working its way across the ground. She crept and did not make a sound. So she is the night. So there's some personification straight away. We're giving it personal pronoun. She crept and did not make a sound. As it's getting darker, then it is totally silent. Until she reached the tree, and then she covered it and stole again. So recognizing that it's moving along the floor, but even if objects like the tree get in the way, she covers that as well. So they fall into darkness. Along the grass and beside the wall, I heard the rustle of her shawl. Now, that's a surprising one, because falling darkness is silent. But this idea of her shawl, this big black cloak covering everything, I think that's a lovely description. As she threw blackness everywhere upon the sky and ground and air. So this is highlighting that it's everywhere. It's not just on the ground, but up in the sky, the air itself, everywhere is getting darker. And in the room where I was hid, but no matter what she did to everything that was without, she could not put my candle out. So the person there is sitting with the candle lit, and no matter what the nighttime does, the candle stays lit and illuminates that small part of the world. So I stared at the night, and she stared back at me. So it's this idea, almost a battle. The night is sort of slowly taken over everything around them, apart from this little illuminated space that was lit by the candle, and the darkness could do nothing about it. Yeah, but we've got all sorts of personification. So we've got the night was creeping. The night reached. The night covered it. The rustle of her shawl through blackness. could not put my candle out, stared. So I stared at the night and she stared back. All these little things that say are human characteristics or human actions and behaviors. Okay, hopefully that made sense. I think that's a lovely piece of writing. So I'd like you to write your own. Now, in that piece, you can see that there was, oops, what have I done? Let's just pick up on that. Sorry about that. I just wanted to go back to the poem. Now, this one does rhyme. Okay, so we've got ground and sound, then and again, wall and shawl, everywhere, air, hid and did, without, out, she, and me. So there is a rhyming pattern there, but I am not expecting you to do the same, unless you want to. If you want to set yourself that challenge, then go for it. Say, enjoy trying to create that rhyming pattern if you can. But that's not the challenge today. Today, your challenge is to use personification. Okay, so you're going to use personification, a series of short lines to create your own poem. Now, I'm going to show you a picture in a moment, so take a close look at it. That's going to be the basis of your poem. So that's what you're going to be describing using personification. You're going to describe the tree using personification. You should write about what you see in the picture or what you would hear, smell, or touch. Remember your 5 senses. The only one they're missing is taste. Although even there might be an opportunity to use taste. If you think about maybe what the roots are absorbing from the soil. So there might be a taste one in there, but generally we're looking at see, hear, smell, and touch. Okay? Think about what actions the tree might be doing and when. So here he is. Straight away, I said he there. And I think it's partly because of the incredible shape of this particular tree. It looks like a human's head. But that's beside the point. We've got ourselves a tree. So we need to think about the objects that we can see. So what are all the elements that make up a tree? What are all the parts of a tree? Well, you've got the trunk and the bark, the crown, which is the top bit. Okay, this is the crown of the tree. You've got twigs and roots and branches and leaves and foliage. Foliage is another name for all the leaves together. Okay, so the whole collection of leaves is the foliage. And there's, I'm sure, other bits in there that I've not thought of. But there's some of the nouns, some of the parts of the tree. So what are they doing? How are they behaving? Why are they behaving in that way? Can we put those human characteristics onto that? So what might these objects do? Are they screaming, shivering, lurking, swallowing, gasping, crying? They can do anything you like. Any emotion or action that you would normally associate with a human character, let's give it to our tree. And then think about when they might do this. Okay. Now, I had a little go at this. Now, I'm expecting you to do something a little bit longer, but this might just get you thinking. The mighty oak stood, watching over its kingdom. Now, straight away, we've got personification there, because obviously trees, we talk about trees standing, but they're not standing. They're actually buried into the ground. So the mighty oak stood, watching over its kingdom. And because of the shape of the tree, I thought it might be sort of looking out. Branches waved at passers-by. Now, we know that branches get caught in the wind and move and sway. It's like they're waving. But are they waving at anyone, or are they simply caught up in the breeze? Well, I've sort of painted this picture that they're actually trying to wave at passers-by. But they did not wave back. He felt totally alone. Now, trees don't have those feelings. They don't have those emotions. But I imagine this tree stuck in that field, away from all the other trees and anybody else, feeling quite alone. His last leaves fell. You can see that this is obviously a winter scene where the tree is quite bare. There's very few, if any, leaves left. So I've just got his last leaves fell. Tears of sadness. Obviously, they're not real tears, they're leaves. But again, it's just creating that picture, that image for the reader. So the mighty oak stood, watching over its kingdom. Branches waved at passers-by. They did not wave back. He felt totally alone. His last leaves fell, tears of sadness. Now, it's entirely up to you what mood you want to create here. Is this a big, brave, proud tree? Or is it something a little bit more sad and lonely, the way I went? What about what's going on underground? Those roots reaching for water, reaching for sustenance from the earth. Is there anything just out of picture that you might include? What about creatures living in the tree? Could we talk about their behavior, how the tree feels about them being there? So there's all sorts of things you could think about. Okay? But remember, whatever you're describing, try and use some human characteristics, emotions, behaviors to help create this wonderful image in our minds. Okay, so there's your challenge. Write me a personification poem about a tree. That is the end of today's lesson. Thank you so much for listening. Take care of yourself, guys. Look after those around you. Stay safe, and I will see you all very, very soon.